unplugged is when you do music, when you have to create new music, you have to do unplugged. So that's really what we're all about. And hopefully today's session will talk about some of the new things, or at least one of the new things that is happening in the area of marketing. So without further ado, let me start sharing my screen, and hopefully we can all see, you'll all be able to see my screen. In case you have a problem, please let us know on chat or something like that, right? So hopefully you can all see the screen right now, which says, forget about artificial intelligence, focus on natural stupidity. Now, that's a very strange topic. But basically, these days, everybody's focused on AI and things like that. But this is a quote from a man who could have been a Nobel laureate. And I'll talk about him in a second. But to be honest, I don't know anything about artificial intelligence. I'm just a marketing guy. And therefore, I'm going to focus on natural stupidity of human beings and how that is. But this is really related to a topic that has become the norm, and it's called behavior change. And this was invented by two people who were Israeli psychologists, Amos Tversky and Daniel Kahneman. Tversky was the guy who came up with that quote that I started this session with, and the one about natural stupidity. And Daniel Kahneman is the first man to win a Nobel Prize for economics who was not an economist. So in 2002, he was a psychologist and he won a Nobel Prize for economics. And what is interesting is that these two guys were studying how human beings take decisions, any kind of decision. And they found it very, very funny because human beings seem to take decisions in very irrational sort of ways. And they used to find it so funny, they used to keep laughing all the time and whenever they were doing it together. Now, the key finding that they had is that all of us have two brains inside us. So there's a system one brain that is fast, it's unconscious, it's automatic, it's everyday decisions, but it makes a lot of errors. This is the thing that keeps working all the time. But then there is a system two part of our brain, which is slow, which takes a lot of effort, but which can take complex decisions and is extremely reliable. The problem is the system two is very fuel inefficient. So you may know, some of you are doctors, you may know that our brain is only 2% of our body mass, but uses up 25% of our energy, of our calories per day. And that is mostly because of system two. So what the brain does is it keeps system two shut down and keeps using system one for everyday decisions. Anyway, so the science that they came up with is called behavior change. And the problem with this word behavior change is that it's very confusing because we all say we want to change somebody's behavior, and then there is a science of behavior change as well. So there's a complication with this. So I'm actually not going to call it behavior change for this session, and we'll call it nudge theory. And really what I'm talking about is how to change behavior without using carrots or sticks. So let me get on to talking about what is nudge theory. But before I do that, I'm going to do a little experiment to get you guys to believe that there are two parts to your brain, system one and system 2. And what I would like you to do is, there is a chat button on your Zoom, and I want you to just respond via text. So don't speak. I don't think we can hear everybody, but I want us to respond via chat. So can each of you just think of one of these numbers, 1, 2, 3, or 4, and just respond on chat with just the number, just one number, quite quickly, please. Whoops. Have you got how many? I can't see for some reason. Just 1 second. How many chats? We just got one. Can we get more people, please, to just type in the number that 1, 2, 3, or 4? Just type it to everyone.
Chat is disabled.
Yeah, chat is disabled actually.
We didn't just enable chat.
We didn't enable the chat, please.
There is no way to enable or disable it, yeah?
It is showing disabled, chat disabled.
Okay. All right. Okay, let it go then. Then I'll just continue, and then we'll, since I couldn't get this going. Okay, anyway, sorry
Yeah,
about
I just
that.
done that. I've just done that. So try it now. Can you please try it?
Yeah, I'm getting a lot of this.
Okay.
Okay, this is interesting. You guys are not representative of the whole world, but okay. Lots of ones here and a few twos, very few twos, some threes, and a few fours so far. Okay, I'm not going to count everything. I'm going to continue with my. So what happens is that actually in most groups, what we find, and maybe this is not statistically valid because I need to use large numbers, but what happens is that most people will end up choosing three. And if you think of the number three, you find that, a lot of people, it's like when we have fairy tales, it's all about, there was a king, he had three sons or he had three daughters. And there was a genie, and genie gave you three wishes and that sort of things. It's always this number three, which is this mystical number in our head. And similarly, if you look at 7, which is another mystical number, if I give you a choice from 1 to 10, you find that 7 is the other number, 7 wonders of the world, Snow White and the 7 dwarfs, and that sort of thing. So there is something mystical happening in our brain, which is very, very strange. There was one more exercise I had, but we're not going to do that, which is really about this one. You can all just do it for yourself for a second. Count the number of F's in this block over there. I'll just stop for half a second. Just do it for yourself. Don't tell me right now. And what happens is that most people get to very easily. Viren, I think you need to mute everyone other than me. So what you find is that, most people can get to 3 Fs very easily, but then often miss out on 3 other Fs. There are actually 6 Fs in here, and most people miss out on. Yeah, well done. So whoever who got the 6, but most people miss out the 3 Fs of off, right? So I mean that's one of those strange things that happen with human beings. And I'm going to do one more thing just for you to see. Suppose imagine that there is this product that you love buying, which is this dairy milk ice cream, and one day you go to the market and there are two identical. I mean, there's these 2 packs. One which is saying 25% off on one product on that original pack, and the other one which is saying 33% extra free. And again, if I ask you what is it that you will want to buy, what we find is that 80% of people tend to go for 33% extra. And the strange thing is, on a unit price basis, there is no difference between between these 2 products. The unit price is exactly the same. Yeah, I think I can see Manish saying it's exactly the same. But most people don't think like that, and they are not able to look at it that way, and so on. And so they're not able to make that, if you like, that the maths for this. So essentially what happens with this is, what we are learning is that there is a system 1 part of our brain, which is really the big part of our brain, right? This is the unconscious part. It's like the iceberg. In fact, scientists say that 96% of our decisions are made by the unconscious, the system 1 part, the automatic part of our brain, and just 4% by the conscious part. And really the whole point about behavior change is that if we can understand and we can make decisions, habits, etc., become part of system 1, then it becomes a habit. Otherwise, behavior doesn't change, because when you have to think to change behavior, it is much harder. And that's really what this is all about. So people are calling it irrational behavior, but as Dan Ariely, who's one of the gurus of this field, says, the good thing is that it's predictably irrational, because in large groups of people, you're able to say that most people will go for one or the other. So I'm going to introduce because I have very little time with you, I'm going to introduce a couple of tenets of nudge theory. The word nudge theory was actually propounded by this man, a chap called Richard Thaler, who won the Nobel Prize for Economics in 2016. So this is a very new science in the sense that Daniel Kahneman won the Nobel Prize in 2002. He was the first person to win the Nobel Prize in behavioral economics. Richard Thaler was the second. And last year, Abhijit Banerjee, Esther Deflo, etc., was the third. So this is just in three, Nobel Prizes in this area. What Richard Thaler said is that when we think of consumers, who are going to receive communication from us, we kind of assume that they're like Dr. Spock, that if we give them better value, then they will buy it. It's like saying my product is exact same quality and it's cheaper, or that is the same price, but I have this one feature which is better or whatever. We assume that Dr. Spock, who has no emotion, he's got a brain like a computer, and he's able to sort of take this decision. The reality is that we are talking to Homer Simpson, who's this little bumbling sort of a guy. He falls in love, he has likes and dislikes, and he's a little cute, but he makes mistakes like all of us. And what Richard Thaler says is, we're not talking to econs, which is what he calls the Dr. Spock of the world, but we're talking to humans. And how do humans behave? So for example, if you look at this girl and, she's got this lovely juicy burger on the one hand, and then this green apple on the other. And, we want to tell her to eat healthy. And what can we do to make her eat healthy? And frankly, all the arguments that we can make to her, she probably knows anyway. She knows it's unhealthy. She knows she'll not lose weight if she does that. All of that she knows. And chances are that whatever we tell her, she's going to actually eat that burger. And maybe she'll combine it with a Diet Coke. And that's maybe the way that we all behave. And what Richard Thaler says is that a nudge for this would be to tell her to eat in a smaller plate. Because it sounds irrational, but actually it has been found by social scientists that if you eat the same amount of food in a smaller plate, your brain thinks that it has eaten a lot and it feels more full, and therefore you end up eating less. So this is one of the kind of tenets that he found. And there are literally hundreds of tenets that have been discovered so far. Every day more and more are getting discovered. I'm going to talk to you only about two because that's all the time that I have. Biren, if there's something that I need to see on the chat, just let me know because I'm not looking at the chat right now.
Yeah, don't look, don't worry.
Yeah, so the first one is act, don't talk. And for those of you who know marketing or know about the marketing funnel, you might be aware of this thing, which we all talk about. It's called the IDA model of marketing. It says that consumers move through this channel. They look for attention, then they get interested, then they feel desire, and finally they buy something. So they take action. And this is the funnel, that marketing funnel that we talk about. Now, this was invented in 1895 by an insurance agent in the United States, and frankly has no basis in academia whatsoever. And so what today's scientists are saying is that actually this works exactly the other way. In fact, if there is some action that you take, then you might get some desire, and then there might be interest in action. So basically what scientists are saying is action changes things, act. So I'm going to show this couple of studies to prove this to you. So the first is to think about, how do we teach a child religion, right? We don't make a child sit down and say, listen, we are a Hindu or you're Muslim or Christian or whatever, and here's the Bible or here's the Quran or here's the Gita or whatever. The way that children learn about religion is that they follow the rituals that happen at home, right? So you take a child and say, Aankh band karo, haath jodo, prasad khao, whatever it is. And then children learn that. And then as they grow up over time, they might get interested and find out more about their religion and whatever else happens. Now, this is how we all learn. We learn by actions. But somehow when we look at marketing, we want to tell people, we say, oh, we have to convince people. We have to, change their attitudes. And that's all wrong. We don't need to change attitude. What we need to do is to change action. So those of you who drink probably know this, right? Tequila. The only way that tequila is drunk is as a shot along with salt and lime. Now, there's no good reason why tequila. Tequila is a terra from Mexico, right? It's just some fermented juice of a cactus plant. But it has become cool because of that ritual, that action on which you celebrate with this. Similarly, Corona beer, unfortunately named beer, now got so much in the news. This is the one beer that people always have from the bottle with a slice of lime over there. And the thing is that the reason the lime was put there was because in Mexico, the bottle would get, there'd be a lot of flies, and this was one way to disinfect the bottle before you had it. But this has become a ritual. And there's a lot of rituals like this which help in marketing, particularly in food and drink. And my favorite example from this is about this, right? Now, for those of you who know biscuits, in India, whichever biscuit brands launched a format first is the leader in that. Parle launched glucose first, and that is still the leader. Britannia launched Good Day cookies first, so therefore they are the leaders in that, and so on and so forth. The one difference is this brand, and I'm going to show you a commercial, and hopefully you can all see it clearly.
एक और तुम्हारा एक मेरा चलो तुम्हारे लिए करूं फिर लिख करो वेरी गुड फिर डन करो
From Cadbury.
Now you saw in this film, nowhere did they say that it's a good biscuit, it's a chocolatey biscuit, whatever. And this is a ritual that we don't use. I mean, in India, we put dry biscuits, salty biscuits, or glucose biscuits in our tea. We don't drink cookies. We don't have cookies with milk. A very American concept. And when it was first launched in India, I actually wrote an article saying this ritual is not going to work. But years later, I worked on this brand myself, and we found that when you do research, you find that all biscuit parameters, the most chocolatey biscuit, the most fresh biscuit, the tastiest biscuit, on all parameters, Oreo wins. And it's all because of a ritual. And that is amazing. I'm going to show you another case study, right? This is about jewelry. Now, we all know that jewelry, our family jewelers, and maybe if some of you are jewelers, I do not intend to offend you or anything. There is a lot of belief that jewelers cheat customers, and therefore they may give, 18 karat gold and say they're giving 22 karat gold and all that. And this was a problem for a big brand, and they were trying to wean people away from their family jewelers. And of course, people would say, my family jeweler is not going to cheat me because they have been with me for 3 generations or 4 generations. So they may cheat everybody else, but they will not cheat me. And so how do you challenge that thing? Even if you are Tatas. And the way that it got challenged was by this device. I'm going to show you one more commercial.
हेलो मैम, ये मिसेस सेन है। कुछ टाइम पहले अपने ही किसी ज्वेलर से खरीदा हुआ गोल्ड एक्सचेंज कराने यहाँ आई। एज यूजुअल गोल्ड की प्योरिटी चेक करने के लिए मैंने उसे हमारे कैरेट मीटर में डाल दिया। 22 कैरेट का गोल्ड 18 का निकला। अरे एक भी कैरेट कम पड़ जाए तो कितना नुकसान होता है पता है? पर उन्होंने कुछ नहीं कहा, गोल्ड एक्सचेंज किया और चुपचाप चली गई। मुझे तो लगा कि अब वो लाइफ में कभी गोल्ड खरीदेंगे ही नहीं, पर ऐसा नहीं हुआ। अब वो अक्सर यहाँ आती है।
तो आप भी आइए तनिष, क्योंकि हम जानते हैं कि ये बातें आपके लिए कितने मायने रखती हैं।
So again, a ritual, it's like you can say what you want, even if you're Tata and a trusted brand like Tata, people don't want to believe you, but they want to believe that machine. And it's a ritual. You bring it in, it's free. And when you make that communication, that's what broke the back of a lot of unbranded jewelry and created a branded jewelry market in India. So that's the first bit, right? Act, don't talk. The second one I want to talk about is inspire, don't market, right? I mean, we don't want to push things. We want people to come in and buy. And here the simple insight is that it's all about why, not about what. It's not about what you do, but why you do it. And I like to say that, let's go back to the Mahabharata. When you think about it, the Mahabharata is the story of a property dispute between 2 cousins, right? Or two parts of the family. Both wanted the same property. But the reason the Mahabharata became an epic, and is something that is remembered, hundreds and maybe thousands of years after it was written, is because in the middle of the book, there is a time when Arjun gives a lecture to, Krishna gives a lecture to Arjun. And that is basically the Gita. It's the philosophy. And this philosophy, this purpose, if you like, is really the core of what scientists are saying. We warm up more to purpose than we warm up to reality, to the action itself. And there's a scientist called Simon Sinek, and he has a lovely TED talk which I'd love you to watch, but I don't have the time to play it here. But what he says is that it's a very simple thing. The normal way that we communicate is from the outside in. He talks about, there are three questions. Why? What is your cause? Why do you do something? How? What is it that you do? And what? What is it that you do? So he says, for example, you can say that, Apple could say we make computers. That's the what of what Apple does. And how do they do it? They make it beautifully designed, easy to use. Now, typically, this is how communication is done. We make a great car. Our car has great mileage, and it has great seats, and it has lovely, air conditioning, whatever. Please buy me. But that is the way we communicate. We talk about what we do. We might talk about how we are different, and we expect a behavior change or an action. Whereas the greatest people, the greatest brands in the world actually talk about purpose. They talk about why. So in the case of Apple, it talks about we want to challenge the status quo. They say think different. And when they say we think different, then they say, therefore, everything that we make is beautifully designed and easy to use. We happen to make computers, but then we also make phones, and we also make MP3 players, and we also make TV, Apple TV set-top boxes, and so on and so forth. And that's the way it works. So if you start from the why, then it starts to work. And we can see that with Apple. But this word of brand purpose, which is really all the why, has become the norm. This is the picture of Alan. I forgot his name, but he was the ex-CEO of Unilever Worldwide. And what he said is that if brands do not have purpose, then brands are going to die, right? And then this is the CMO of P&G Worldwide, Jim Stengel, and he wrote the book where he said that not only is it important for you to do it, but actually is it good for you to talk about brand purpose. But he found that brands that talk about their purpose actually outperform in the market brands without purpose. And not only on the stock market, but also in sales and in profit. And he did that by looking at various brands across the country, including India, over a 10-year period. And I'm going to just share with you one simple case study of a brand called Ben & Jerry, which is an ice cream brand in the US. And you think about ice cream brand and you say, how can you differentiate one ice cream brand from another? And it's really about taste or something like that. But Ben & Jerry is run by two guys who learned to make ice cream from a correspondence course. So they were not passionate ice cream makers, but they wanted to make ice cream parlors because they wanted to make a difference to the community. And their baseline for this brand is peace, love, and ice cream, which sounds rather grandiose for an ice cream brand. And if you go to their website, you see that they have an issues we care about page. And they talk about all kinds of issues: racial justice, democracy, GMO labeling, LGBTQ, etc., climate change, all of that. And what they do is that every piece of communication that they talk about one of these issues, and they kind of link it back to their ice cream. So I'm going to show you one television film. I'm going to show you a couple of press ads.
Imagine this pint is our democracy, and this spoon is how we access it. The way it should work is that we all have one of these. We wouldn't need to be born with a silver one. And we each use it to get an equal share of democracy, with plenty to go around. But lately, it seems like some people are exploiting the process, taking way more than their fair share, while denying others the tools they need to participate. It's enough to make you want to just leave your spoon on the table. But what if we all took democracy into our own hands? We could make sure everyone's voice is heard, and that everyone has the same access to a democracy that serves us all equally, giving everyone a real taste of empowerment. Get involved and take action at benjerry.com/democracy.
2 years ago in Australia, they were going to vote on gender equality, whether same-sex marriage was be allowed. And so Ben & Jerry took out an ad which said, "Attention customers, we are banning 2 of the same flavored scoops." That's right, no same scoop flavors until we have marriage equality for all Australians. At Ben & Jerry's, we believe love comes in all flavors. Join us and say, I do to marriage equality in partnership with the Equality Campaign. And then subsequently, when Syrian refugees were coming in and they said, welcome to the neighborhood and come in and share your experiences, we should give you a free ice cream. So they're just always about the community. And that is why they're the most well-loved ice cream brand in the US. They recently got acquired by Unilever, and Unilever has decided to leave them alone because they are the ultimate kind of a purpose brand. So what brand purpose seems to do is that it attracts talent, people who want to work for organizations that have a higher brand purpose, as well as customers. And that is wonderful. And so again, it sounds counterintuitive to say, people don't want to know what you do. People want to know why you do it. What is it that's behind your, what's your philosophy, your higher order purpose, and things like that. So that is quite amazing and, surprising. So I'm going to summarize this now. And, there are so many tenets and, we can keep getting confused with lots and lots of tenets. I only showed you two. But there's a guy called B.J. Fogg, who's a professor at Stanford, and he's come up with one little formula for how behavior change happens. He says B is equal to MAT, right? And which stands for behavior is equal to motivation into ability into trigger. Now, first of all, I'll explain these three terms, but just notice that it's all multiplicative, which means that if one of the three things is missing, then there'll be no behavior change. So all three have to happen. And what he does is he says, suppose you have motivation on the y-axis going from high to low, and you have action. How hard is it to do something? Going from hard to easy, that is the ability part. Then you will get behavior on the diagonal. But there is a kind of a borderline. And below this, it does not happen. There's no behavior change. So you have to move it up. You have to use triggers to go above this sort of border. And only then does behavior change happen. And so what you found is all the various tenets of the market fall into one of these three buckets. So for example, the first two is what we've talked about in today's session: inspire, don't market, or action changes things. These are all in the area of motivation. And there are many other things like stop losses, or tell stories, create ownership, or ability, which is making it easy. So make choices easy. We think choices are good, but actually we found that when you give people too much choice, they don't know what to decide. When you make them choose between A and B, they can choose. If you give them up to 6 choices, people can choose. But if you give them 20 choices, people don't know what to do and they end up doing nothing. They say, "Baad mein sochenge." Make it social, add fun, etc. And then there are triggers, order to behave, like something. So we can keep talking about this. Like I've already taken up more of your time than I had planned to. So the summary of what I'm saying is that we need to appeal to system 1, which is the automatic part of our brains, not to logic. The way to do that is through behavioral insights. And a quick way to remembering this is B is equal to MAT. I'd urge you to read, there are many books on this subject. This is the book that Daniel Kahneman wrote, for which he won the Nobel Prize, Thinking Fast and Slow. Misbehaving is the book by Richard Thaler, the other Nobel Prize winner. He's written many books, but this is the one that I like best. This is a book by Diane Ariely, Predictably Irrational, which actually got me into the subject. It's a very, very readable book, very simply written, not technical at all. And then, if I may, I'll be allowed one moment of self-promotion. I wrote a book called Marketing Unplugged, which also talks about many of these things, but talks more about the different ways of doing marketing. So that's really it. This is my website, marketingunplugged.in. You can reach me through that, and that's got my email and phone numbers and so on and so forth. And I'd love to connect with you guys, away from this, etc. So yeah, so that's really my session. I don't know if we have time for questions, but I'm happy to take questions, etc.
We do have time for questions. Would you like them on the chat or would you like them to voice it?
Up to you. I'm good. I'm fine. Whichever way works.
We'll try the chat because it will get us clarity on the questions itself.
Yeah. Okay.
So friends, whoever needs to ask him a question can please do that and type it on the chat room, on the chat window.
Yes, I can see that somebody is saying that Samir is saying that thank you, it was very insightful. I'm a family jeweler and I can vouch for the effectiveness of the Tanishq campaign. It has
Yes,
changed how we operate as an industry.
so true.
Gaurang asked, how applicable would this MAT model be for B2B businesses and NGOs? In fact, I work a lot with NGOs. I, in fact, work in the social sector. Normally, this is the kind of chat talk. I mean, I do 2-day workshops for this as part of my social sector work. And in fact, behavior change is the method that we use in the social sector to make things happen. So there's a lot more case studies from the social sector than there are from the corporate sector. Corporate sector is only recently getting used to the idea of behavior change. So it's much more over there. I think that B2B, obviously, the number of cases are much more limited at this point. But that's because B2B tends to follow B2C with a huge time lag, in my view. But I think it works, and there are examples of this as well, which we can talk about. Digital marketing for B2B, and so I think digital marketing is one of those things that is, it's about saying, look, word of mouth is what works. A lot of nudge theory works because of word of mouth, and I think that digital marketing has just made digital marketing. So therefore, there's a lot of marketing. I mean, obviously, digital marketing is a huge area, and we spent a whole session, many sessions, is talking about it.
Venkesh, बॉम्बे एयरपोर्ट का डिजिटल मार्केटिंग पे टॉक चल रहा
है. Yeah. So how can possible behavior change of the customers post-COVID issue? In fact, I think that is phenomenal, right? See, already our behavior has changed. Maybe we're all washing hands a lot more. Certainly, I mean, companies that never thought that they would go digital have suddenly gone digital, right? I mean, it's almost like behavior change because it got forced upon us. But forget about that. I think that there will be many other things that will happen where suddenly health will become a huge issue. And, suddenly some other things. Now, I'm not qualified to talk about this, and maybe we'll find out more as we go along, because it's not just about rationality. And that's really what we're talking about here, that it's, consumers behave in irrational ways. And we don't know what will happen. Governments may think that they can reopen the economy on 3rd of May or 4th of May or whatever, and that we'll all go back to the way it was, but we won't. And what will happen? I mean, who knows? Samir has again said, most of the products have become commodity. It's difficult to differentiate. Also, SME has a challenge in terms of large spend in advertising. So how does one go about it? I think that's the point, right? Which is that differentiation on the what is very hard, because everybody has the same technology. And at the end of the day, people start making very similar products. The differentiation in the why is often easier. And I think that is really, and the way you behave, it's like take that case to ice cream, right? I mean, how do you differentiate ice cream? But Ben & Jerry is a different kind of an experience. And Ben & Jerry works at a community level. It is not about being a national brand. It's about, in that small community, it is talking about gay marriage, racial equality, and all sorts of issues like that. And that is why they have become strong. And any SME, small business, can actually do this. In fact, that is why I keep talking about this, that NGO or a SME who do not have large marketing budgets can still do it. And big companies like Levers and Procter & Gamble are now waking up to it. But really, it's about small companies that is really can, sort of take the leap with behavior change nudge theory.
Suman, I think you missed a couple of questions ahead. One on behavioral science. Does it work for industrial products? Paresh had a question.
No, I think that same thing when I was talking about B2B, and I felt that industrial product is B2B kind of marketing, right? That's the main thing about industrial. I think the only question is, it's about, think of the word ability. That ability is, how do I remove friction in my business dealing? So you'll find that the product may be the same. You and your competitor who's supplying to another company is probably making the same, it's anyway specified in industrial products and you can't change the specification. But what happens is that it's about reliability. It is about some other aspects of this, or it is easier to call you or some other way. How can you make it easy? So B is equal to MAT. the A part can sometimes be the crucial difference.
There's one unique one on healthcare marketing and how does it make it ethical?
See, now ethics is a question that I get asked a lot, right? And I mean, I would just say that, look, this is a tool. And like any other tool, it can be used for non-ethical purposes as well as ethical purposes. Now, that is not a fault of the tool. And so in the social sector, we can say we work for ethical reasons and so on and so forth. But in healthcare marketing, this is the way, right? I mean, look at what, for example, the healthcare industry has convinced us that, you know, a cholesterol of 200 is bad for you. Now, medical science, you know, all doctors will say that's rubbish. What is 200? It depends on how much is LDL and HDL and triglyceride. And they look at all these three things. They look at their ratio. They look at number of scores. But for the lay consumer, boss, I don't have time. I don't understand all those scores. All I understand is 200 एक number दे दो मेरे को. And that I will listen to. And so, you know, on diabetes, H1A1, HbA1c test under 7, over 7. So pharma marketing has understood these simple numbers you give people, people will listen to it. Now, that is the way it works. So again, that's an example of, another very good example is, why did polio vaccines work in India? And the reason it worked is, A, that you made it very simple and you ordered people to behave. And that's one of my case studies on that, which is that Amitabh Bachchan would come on and say, Aaj Sunday, just go to this place, give 2 drops to your little baby if he's, you know, if he hasn't got a polio drop. And that is how we managed to do polio vaccine all over the country. And, you know, considering that we, as a country and as a world, we've almost eradicated polio, that's a huge, you know, this thing of nudge market. It's one of the case studies of nudge theory in healthcare.
I'm sure you're aware of Rotary's role in polio, are you?
No, I'm not. Sorry.
So Rotary played a big role in eradicating polio across the world.
Okay.
Raju, you want to say something?
And unethical and medical, it was not referring to pharma and labs. It was referring to a doctor or a hospital, how they can go about doing their digital marketing.
Okay. No, I mean, I don't have much to say on that because, you know, that's a fairly legalish. Sorry, again, he's on mute.
Medical Council of India, that doctor cannot do any publicity or digital marketing using his name. Yeah, but the hospital, without the name of the doctor, is still permissible to do some digital marketing. It was not about the lab or pharma. It was about the marketing of your, whatever you are going to do for the patient, what you can offer.
No, so, I mean, we can get into that. I don't really know much about that subject, so I shall duck that question.
I think Khushbu has an interesting comment to make.
Yeah.
She says Shabana Azmi is HIV. You read that?
Yeah, I read that, yeah.
Okay. Anybody else? So I'm going to unmute now and let the chaos happen. If there is some people who are not able to type in, Suman, let's just give them the chance. Everybody is unmute.
Certainly you have added that अगर कुछ और जानना है तो you have to contact Dhara Farm. You get what I mean? These are how the marketing videos are made.
No, Soman, it gives you an insight of what people are doing while they are listening to our audio. Sorry, we'll go back to.
Wow.
So thank you everybody, and thanks Suman. It was an amazing session. I have a couple of my co-presidents as well, my very senior members of our club. Just 1 second. Just 1 second.
The video may know, but I'll tell.
Yeah, sorry, Suman. So I was just telling you that we have a couple of co-presidents. I have Pradeep Parekh there. I also have Bansi Durandar, who's our past district governor. I have a couple of very senior people from our club joining. A lot of people in the advertising field. I think I saw Rajesh Agarwal as well. And So thank you, Suman. I think it was a great session. We at some point had almost reached around 100 plus members attending it. So it was really great. And I'm going to post this recording on a Facebook if you're okay with that. And if there is anything else, and if you would like to share something about your work, then I'm sure I'm more than happy to circulate it amongst our members and all those who participated as well.
So just my website and my email ID. So that's fine. It's all on my website as well. So,
yes. So I think your website's already been asked for by 2-3 people. So I've had to respond to them on a personal chat while it was on. So Marketing Unplugged, is that correct?
Yeah, marketingunplugged.in, not dot. Okay. .in.
Okay, fair. So thank you, Suman, and thanks for an amazing session. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Viren.
This recording is going to be available on our Facebook page, Rotary Club of Bombay Airport Facebook page.
Thank you, President.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye,
Thank you. Thank you, Paresh.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Bye,
When all
thank you.
this is over, we'll celebrate that in Mumbai.
Motivational
We'll do a party.
Bye, Vivek.
When all this is over, we'll do a
Bye.
party of
Bye.
sorts. Like that, to celebrate this.